big thing I think for me taking away was, and I think what a lot of other people took away from this, is that Mitch Trubisky is here to stay. He's not going anywhere. The Steelers want Mitch Trubisky around. He was obviously down in Florida with Kenny Pickett, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Austin, George Pickens, all those guys last week. $10 million cap hit. The Steelers would save $8 million if they cut him today. But Omar Khan said that he wants him around long-term, not even right now, but for a long time. Loves the connection there, wants a quality backup quarterback. Didn't talk contract, but I think you could kind of assume that that means that they'll renegotiate and maybe extend him for a year or two. But I think maybe we put the stamp on Mitch Trubisky as the QB2 for the Steelers this season.
Yeah, which is really interesting. I don't think either of us would have guessed that walking into the NFL Combine today, walking into that press conference with Omar Khan. Quite frankly, it seems a little weird to me. I feel like they had options, whether it be the draft or, free agency or a trade or something like that. They had other avenues to go besides Mitch Trubisky. And, it might not have been what I do, but clearly they see something in him. They saw something in the relationship with Kenny Pickett. It's interesting. I think especially the not just we'll keep him around for this year, but we're thinking about him as a piece long term. That was the most interesting part to me.
Yeah, I don't know what do you think long term means? To me, it's like, how long can you stay here? Because I look at Mitch Trubisky as a guy that he's not going to be cool with just being a career backup. I think he's going to want, especially not in Pittsburgh. Like, it's not like, oh man, I can't wait to back up Kenny Pickett my whole career or for the remainder of my career. Yeah, it's good money. It's really good money if you're Mitch Trubisky, and it's a job. It's security. But I would imagine the number 2 pick in the draft a couple of years ago wants one more shot to go prove himself somewhere. What do you look at long term? What is long term to Mitch Trubisky? 2 years, 4 years, the rest of his career?
It can't be more than 2 years, right? Like there is, like 4 years. I don't know. That just seems like a dead end for everyone.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you got to think about upgrading that position. It's 4 years would be a lot. 2 years seems even like a lot to me too. But I'm not Omar Khan, and Omar Khan really must appreciate the relationship more than I do.
But if you could get him to a cheap deal, because so you'll have to extend him. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you give him $10 million this season and you lose $8 million, you're crazy. Doesn't make any sense. You have totally screwed your team out of $8 million. You've done a very bad GM job. But if you could extend him, you extended him only a year. You're saying 4 years is too long. I agree with that one. Is 2 like a happy medium, or you're still thinking 2 is too long on a much lesser money deal?
Well, look, assuming that you are going to extend him. If I was in Omar Khan's position, I probably wouldn't have said that we're going to keep him around even this year. But assuming that your goal is to extend him, I don't see any value in extending him past 2 years. You extend him one more year, probably past. So when you say 2 years, you're talking past
23, 24. Yeah.
Okay.
2 more seasons.
Yeah. Yes. So that's fine to me, I guess, if you want to extend him, but you don't know exactly what the landscape's going to look like in 2024. You don't know what your team is exactly going to look like in 2024. To tie yourself to Mitch Trubisky for that long seems not very prudent to me. It doesn't seem, because the other thing is, if you want to keep him around, you're probably going to be able to. I don't expect that after 2 years of being a backup to Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky is going to create a lot more value for himself.
Yeah, I get that. I think the thing that stuck to me about the Mitch Trubisky thing is that Omar was also somewhat open that the Steelers are interested in drafting a quarterback. Yeah. And to me, I've been pushing you should draft a quarterback. I think I'm the only one who's been on the draft a quarterback train. I think it makes total sense. I think it's what they wanted to do with Chris Oladokun last year, was for him to be that third guy that kind of meshes into that second guy over time. I think that makes a lot of sense for the Steelers, but how long are you going to let that guy sit as the third quarterback? Is it going to be longer than a season? Is it going to be, I think you can't, if you're the Steelers and you look at this situation, you cannot sit there and say, okay, this is Mitch's last year with us. If they want to keep him, they got to keep him for at least another season after this one, because you have to extend him to lower that cap hit. You have to at least try. Do you draft a guy still and then say, okay, well, you got 2 years of sitting on the bench as the third guy, and then maybe you'll be our number 2. I mean, maybe a 7th round pick, that's all you're good for. Maybe that's totally fine. That's enough developmental time. But I don't think this is as long term as Omar Khan wants to make it seem. I don't think that, Mitch Trubisky being a career quarterback for the Steelers is something that is realistic in the eyes of anybody. I think Omar kind of, he might want that. The Steelers might want that, but is it going to happen? I don't think so.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't think Mitch wants that. I don't think the quarterback who would be sitting behind him wants that. That's why I don't think extending him beyond 2024 makes much sense at all. I'm still kind of with you on drafting a quarterback, but if you're gonna do that, you're not keeping Mitch past 2024, right?
I wouldn't keep him past 2023, but
right. Well, yeah,
and maybe that's the thing. Maybe if you do extend him, you lower the cap hit this year, and then you just cut him next year. But even at that point, what are you cutting him for? You need a third quarterback anyways, so you might as well keep the ones that you got. It's like a Mason Rudolph, Josh Dobbs situation. Maybe somebody calls to trade for him. I think it makes some sense for the Steelers to hold on to this guy for cheap money if they could get him for much cheaper money. If they don't, I don't think it makes any sense. But I think their plan right now, at least, is to extend Mitch, lower that cap hit significantly, draft somebody late, hope that guy turns into the next Mitch, and then move on from there. Proceed to their next disaster of a backup quarterback situation.
Right. I was gonna say, but at some point you have to cut your losses.
Yeah.
At some point you have to say okay, we took Mitch in, didn't work out, whatever. You have to kind of own that and eat it and just move on. And I just wonder when they're going to do that. This just seems like dragging on an experiment that clearly didn't work for reasons that I can't really understand.
Yeah. It's the kid shoes with Kenny Pickett is ridiculous in my eyes and is so overblown. It's crazy because I think that if you have to have such kid gloves with your starting quarterback, maybe this is not that good of a quarterback, and I think Kenny Pickett will be just fine if you let him go and you stopped making moves just to justify the easement of Kenny Pickett's development. I don't think it's going to ruin him that his backup quarterback's gone, but in the eyes of Omar Khan and the eyes of Art Rooney, they're like, oh yeah, let's do it. We can't get rid of his OC. It's gonna screw things up. We can't get rid of his backup quarterback. Well, if you can't do these things and he's not going to be okay, well, he's not going to be okay. One day it's going to come back to bite you in the butt. And
what's been one of Kenny's strengths this far? Adapting, adversity. This, I don't know. You have to let him grow a little bit. And I feel like they're not letting him grow. And these seem like scared moves.
Yes,
retaining
scared moves.
Retaining Matt Canada, keeping Mitch around. I don't know. It seems like they have talked so much about Kenny's toughness and his mental toughness. They talked about it way too much to think that keeping these guys around is absolutely essential for Kenny's development.
Yeah, and it's not. And it's a waste of money. It's bad allocation of salary cap, but it's somewhere along the line, somebody thought this was a good idea. If I had to take a guess, it was Art Rooney who thinks this is a good idea. And people are just like, all right, well, there's nothing we could do here then. Do I agree with it? Not a chance. And I'm not going to agree with it. Even if they do lower his cap hit, that's cool. If you could lower his cap hit to $5 million a year, that's really good money for a quality backup quarterback. I get it. I still think that how this all started, ridiculous. Way too overblown. But
absolutely,
they could make it work. I think they can make it work where you're less upset about the situation.